Okay, and welcome to the video. This is the first in a series of videos that will highlight the key features of erpQL and how you can use it to improve your Unit4 ERP real-time reporting, your integrations, and speed up the process of building external tools against Unit4 ERP. So in this video, we're going to take a look at ERP7 and erpCR, where if you're building integrations or external reports, you may have to use both the newer public REST APIs alongside the older SOAP web services, and then deal with the complexity of juggling those. We'll then discover how erpQL can remove those complexities and greatly simplify how you can get the data you need without worrying about the underlying technology. First up though, I'm Peter Davis from Panache Software. I'm a software developer with over 20 years experience building customizations and integrations for Unit4 ERP across all sectors. Using the data query and manipulation language GraphQL, I've built erpQL to be a query language for your ERP system, designed to work with the tools you already use and remove the complexities of interacting with a multitude of API endpoints and web services. It allows you to get the real-time data you need when you need it. Now, one thing I want to cover quickly is how you use erpQL. I'm going to use the Banana Cake Pop web-based UI, which you can see on screen now, and this is a third-party tool. erpQL hosts an instance of this for you to use if you want, but to show you that there isn't any smoke and mirrors, that you're not being locked into using a specific application, I just want to quickly demonstrate how you can use a tool like Postman, which you may already use to interact with erpQL. So let's jump on over into Postman. Now, in its beta version, Postman now includes a GraphQL browser or interface, and this is very similar to the one that you've just seen in the web-based Banana Cake Pop. I'm not going to demonstrate that now because it's almost identical, and what I want to do is show you interacting with erpQL in its raw form, and that's basically as a REST API. So all we do in Postman is we add a request, and all calls to erpQL are post calls, and we're going to put in our address and GraphQL. Okay, and this is our endpoint for the erpCR schema that GraphQL or the erpQL exposes. Now, to be able to make the calls, we have to add a couple of extra bits and pieces. So in the headers, we need to let erpQL know which user we are, in which case we have a API key that you would be provided with, and we've got that stored here. And also you need to let it know which environment you're working with. So in this instance, I've got a test environment set up in erpQL. And at this stage, we could actually begin making calls, but all we would see is we would get unauthorized user errors back. And that's because on its own, erpQL has no ability to call your API endpoints by itself. The only way it can do it is if you provide the authorization details at the time you're making the request. In the same way as if you were making a call to a REST API yourself through this tool. These authorizations can be in the form of an IDS OAuth token, or if you're still using them, a username and password in basic authentication. And that's what I've got set up here in my test environment. So I set up my basic auth, and I've already got my Unit4 user and my Unit4 user password set up to interact with. And now we can go straight ahead and actually start making calls. Now, as I said, erpQL is just a REST endpoint. We've actually got a GraphQL option in Postman that we could tick. If I do that, it's going to go away. It's going to fetch the schema, and it's going to use IntelliSense to allow you to easily construct your query. Again, I want to just demonstrate the simplest form of this, so a raw post call. So we choose raw, and we've got JSON, and all we do is add a query property, and this is where we actually output our GraphQL request. And you're going to see this request in the other tool we're using in a bit more detail, but this is its simplest form. So let's make a call to the supplier's endpoint to get supplier information. And let's go and get the supplier ID and the supplier name. And let's just send that. What erpQL is doing is it's going off, it's calling your endpoint with your credentials, and it's returning that information. It's made a request to the supplier's endpoint, and it's brought back all of the supplier information. Well, I say all of the information, only those bits of information that you've actually requested. And that's one of the key factors of GraphQL, is it only provides the information you ask for. So you can see we're getting the supplier ID and the supplier name back. We could add in another field, status, for instance, and we can issue the same request, and we're going to go and get that field as well. If we want to reduce the amount of data we're getting back, we can add various filters and things on it. erpQL has got some arguments built into the queries. So in this instance, we have an argument on suppliers, which is supplier ID. And for this, I can give it a supplier ID. And you'll notice you have to put supplier ID in quotes. That actually breaks the JSON format. So if we just escape those within the request, run this again, it's going to make the request again, but you're only going to get one supplier back. So this demonstrates that you can use Postman, you could use Unit4 extension kit, anything that can make a REST API call can interact with erpQL. I'm not required to use any other tools. So let's have a look at this. Let's jump back into erpQL and see how this works in that example. So here we are. We're in our Banana Cake Pop UI, and we've got this set up. So we can use our query builder, and again, this time we're going to use the nice user interface. So we're going to head on down to suppliers. We're going to choose supplier, and it's going to bring in all the fields that are available to us. Let's just get our supplier name and our supplier ID this time, and we'll run the request in here, and you'll see we get the same data as we were getting in Postman. And you can see our query looks the same as it did in Postman. It's just a bit easier to deal with in this UI. We can add our arguments on again, and within the UI, I can choose supplier ID to populate this for me, to speed things up a bit, and just put my supplier 1000 in there. And there you go, I'm returning this data. Now, so far in these examples and in erpQL in general, we're making requests to the Unit4 REST APIs that are published. So these are the APIs that are published within ERP7, ERPCR, and ERPX. Now, this is great. We're making requests to APIs, we're getting JSON back. That's something we're all very familiar with when we're building our integrations. One of the downsides of using things like ERPCR and ERP7 when it comes to integrations, and this is something that your technical team may well know very well, is that you sometimes have to fall back onto the SOAP web services. These are the original web services that Unit4 provided to get this type of information. In ERPX, they don't exist, and the API layer is much more fully featured. In ERP7 and ERPCR, they are still there, and we might need to interact with them. Now, they work perfectly well, but we have to use a different technique to access them. And let's have a look at that. We'll hop back over to Postman, and we'll look at our SOAP request. So one area in ERP7 where this is key is within the document archive. The document archive is not exposed as a REST API within ERP7 and ERPCR. It's only a SOAP web service. To be able to call that, we need to make SOAP requests. And here's one right now to get the document types that are available in the document archive. And as you can see, our endpoint is different. We're calling the web service URL. In our headers, we're having to provide SOAP actions and change the content type. And in our body of the request, we're having to create these SOAP envelopes and provide XML information. In this instance, we're saying, go and get the document types that are related to a key of DS attribute and then the ID of A5, which is the supplier attribute. We can run this and we get our result back. So we can see against that key and that key ID, we've got documents of type SIN1 with all its index information and supplier with, again, all its index information. As you can see, works perfectly well, but let's be honest, we're cool developers nowadays. We only like to talk in JSON, and that's what we're used to dealing with. And switching back to using XML, requesting data in SOAP web services, is a bit of a downside to building these types of integrations. In addition, if we're using external tools to do this kind of thing, do those tools have the ability to call a SOAP web service? If they do, you're mixing and matching REST APIs and SOAP requests, and therefore you're mixing and matching JSON and XML, so you might be having to translate one to the other and vice versa to get the information you need. And it just adds a large overhead to actually developing your integrations and other tools. Wouldn't it be nice if we could get around this? And in this case, erpQL is our answer to this. So let's head on back over to erpQL and let's scroll up through our schema, and you can see that we've got a document types query available to us. We can click on this and we can choose indexes, and this is one of the neat things that I can demonstrate now. If I run this query, what erpQL has done is it's headed off, it's queried the supplier REST API, got the information we requested, and then it's queried the SOAP web service and got that information as well, and returned it all to you in JSON in one single call. So therefore, you're now interacting with that SOAP web service as if it was a REST API and getting the data back in the format you expect. If we need to move data from lookup to lookup, it's now all in the same format for us. So this is a real time saver. So that on its own, I think, is a major plus point. Your SOAP web services are now exposed using erpQL as effectively REST API endpoints without you needing to make any changes within the actual system itself. But can we go further than this? Let's have a look at our Postman again. And if we actually want to look up some document archive information, so for example, we want to go and get all the documents that are held against supplier 1000, the supplier that we looked up in our initial query. How do we go and get that? Well, we first have to issue a SOAP call to go and get the document types that are applicable to suppliers. This was this initial call here. So we've got a document type of SIN1, and we've also got our supplier document type. Then we need to make another call for each of those document types to the document properties endpoint. And here I'm getting the supplier document types, and I'm requesting them for supplier 1000 in client EN. If I make that call, I get the details back, so I can see I've got a document ID here, and I've got another document ID. If I want to get them for the other document type, I can change this and send that request again, and I get the properties to the other document. But I still haven't retrieved the document. So now I need to get the document revisions, and in this case, I'd be looping through all of those document properties I returned previously and using the document ID and the document type, sending another request, and actually getting that file content back, that base 64 file content back. So if I want to do this myself, I'm having to make a multitude of queries. I'm having to get document types, I'm having to loop through those document types to get document properties, and then having to loop through those document properties to get the actual documents themselves. And again, all of this is very doable. I could do this in Extension Kit. I just have multiple actions and some loops on those actions to get the data I need, and I have it. But surely there is a better way to do this kind of thing. And again, erpQL is here to help you and greatly reduce the complexity of doing this. So again, let's pop back over to our system. Let's take out our document types call so it doesn't get in the way. And let's head back to the suppliers. We're getting our supplier 1000. If we run this again, we get our supplier. And if you look in the supplier query, we have a document archive node. And if I click on this and run that request, what you can see is it goes away and it's getting all of the documents and all of the file contents for those documents that are held against the supplier. What erpQL has done behind the scenes here is it's done all those SOAP requests for you. It's gone away in real time, queried the document types, seen what's available, queried the document properties, seen what documents are needed, and then queried the actual revisions to go and bring them back. Let's take out the file content in this instance just to reduce the complexity of what we're returning, so we can see those a bit better. And in fact, let's also remove the index values and run that again, and you can see document archive has returned 3 documents, 2 supplier ones, and 1 SIN1 document. If we want to query this even more and reduce the amount we're getting back, say we only want the supplier documents, we can add that to our document archive call. We can add a where clause onto here, and we can say where document type, and we can say is equal to supplier. Run this, and now we've got the same call, document archive call, but we've only got those 2 supplier documents. So this is a real time saver for you and shows just one of the features of erpQL to reduce the complexity of your lookups. You don't have to worry about going and querying SOAP web services, translating XML into JSON and vice versa, looping through and making all those requests. erpQL is doing that all for you in real time, and it's doing it quickly. You can see these calls are returning in 247 milliseconds. It's making all those multiple calls to the web services, look up things up, and get that data back as quick as it can. And that's it. That's mainly the key points I wanted to cover to show you that erpQL can dramatically simplify your data lookups, do all of the hard work for you, and you don't have to worry about all of the underlying technical aspects to that. You just ask erpQL for the data you want, and it takes care of figuring out how to go and get that information. So thanks for your time, and I'll see you in the next video.